Hello everyone, in this tutorial I'm going to show you what an amazing software Krita is, and TJ was pushing this software and I think he had a good point. It's really a great software and I think it's a good replacement for thumbnailing and storyboarding. Instead of doing that in Photoshop, you could just do it in Krita, and I'm going to show you what are the amazing features that it has. So first things first, it's a free software, so yay! You can just type in Krita, and then the first search term that comes up, it's going to direct you to this page. You can get it for free for Mac, for Linux, for Windows, and installation is just double clicking on it. It's just going to be installed, right? So not going to go through that part. And when you installed it, and let me just open it. So I already put it in here, pinned it to my taskbar. So I'm just going to click on it. It's going to open up. So what I do is I'm going to just create a new project, and I'm just going to say custom document, and you can see that in here, make sure you type in the pixels, the frame size that we always use, 1920 by 1080. Resolution, you can set it to be 300. Later when we want to export it as a movie, it's going to be reduced down. It's good to have a good source with a resolution of 300, which it's the best thing for printing, right? So everything else, I guess, fine as is. So I'm just gonna hit create, and I get this view, right? So the nice thing is there are lots of the keyboard shortcuts. They are really similar to Photoshop. So if you are a user of Photoshop, you already know the hotkeys. So let me first get rid of the touch. Oh, this is actually disabled, so hopefully it's not going to show up. Okay. So for example, if you want to move, you hold down space and you move, and you can see here I have this thing that tells you what are the keyboard keys that I push. So you can see that, holding down space, you can move around, and brush is B. And so what makes Krita better than Photoshop for storyboarding is that you get a nice, decent timeline, and also you get layers. So not only the layers, but a really cool and intuitive timeline, which I think is amazing. So what you have here is layer 1. So I'm just going to double click on it and just name this BG background and solid. So I'm just going to leave it as white. And what I do next is I would come here and just lock it, because I don't want to draw on a solid white layer. I want to be able to draw on a transparent layer, right? So you can just click on this icon here. It's gonna bring up another layer. I'm just gonna call this one line. And then you can switch to actually big paint, animation. So this is an animation workspace, right? This is all cool. You have lots of things like this window here that is going to let you play around things and just move a keyframe by keyframe, which is exactly what we need. But it's nice to have the brushes here, I think, right? So in Krita, these windows, they are all living into something, they are all called Dockers. So if you go to settings and go to Dockers, you can see lots of Dockers here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to check brush presets, and then the brush tools are going to be here available to me, right? So you can make all these changes, and if you want, you can go here to Workspace and just name this new layout that you created and just save it there, and you can always go back to this layout if you want it. Those are the cool fanciest stuff that you can do here. You don't have to do that. Just gonna here show you the basic things that you can do with Krita. So the nice thing, as I said, is this timeline, right? Oopsie, come here. Come here, you. Space, no. Okay. So the nice thing that you have is this layer thing, right? So you can see that this timeline, it's nice in such a way that you can tell it to see some of the layers and just hide them from the timeline. Like for example here, this background, you can see that each layer that you choose, it's going to show up in here, right? So I can, let's just create another layer so my point is more clear. So I'm just going to call this one color. I haven't added anything to it, but just going to put it underneath the line layer. So this is the layer that I can use for putting colors, right? So you can see as I click on these layers, they're going to be selected in the timeline. But what if you want to see multiple layers at once? So what you can do is you can just click on this color, right click actually on this color in the timeline and say show in timeline. And then I'm going to go to line, and then you can see that this color layer is going to be always shown up in my timeline. And I always want to see the line layer too, so I'm just going to click here, right click, and be like show in timeline. So no matter what I click in the layers, this color and line layer are always going to be show up in the timeline. And you can just check them back off if you don't need them. But like for example, this solid background, why do I want to see that here, right? So I'm just going to have it just be by its own, and I'm gonna just leave it locked. So what next? Let's just see what we can do here. So these are all the brushes, and I think the icons are pretty nice, so you get a sense of what they're gonna do if you choose them. So in the line, I'm just gonna select this line layer, and I'm just gonna start drawing. This is the first thing that I draw. Like a really smiley face, big eyes, just standing there watching. Hey you. Okay, so let's say this is like your first thumbnail or the first sketch for drawing, right? And I put it in the line layer. So you can see that you have this indicator that shows where you're at the timeline, right? If you click on the top part, you can just move around in the timeline. If you click on this and this, it means that you're working with the keyframe that is created here. Actually, let's just create insert keyframe, right. So you can see that now I have this keyframe, right? And if I select on it and drag it, see what's happening? It just holds this frame. This is a keyframe, and this is also a keyframe when you see this rectangle around it. But where you see a line, it means I'm just going to hold on to this frame until the next one. So there's a good stuff here that you can use, right? But because later I want to just export this to a PSD layer for the line work, I'm not going to do that, right? But you see the you see that it can be beneficial. Like if I create another layer, let's say I'm going to call this one, this is my actual background, not the solid color background. Let's say, you know, I want to just have this girl standing in a room, right? Just happened. Control Z. So I'm just going to right click and say show in timeline. So now I'm in a background mode, right? I'm just going to draw a background for this girl that is standing there. This is going to be my room. This is the door. This is the window. And there is this beautiful flower by the window, right? Okay, but I drew it in the background layer, right? So you can see that so you have this option, like if you have multiple frames for one background, you have the option to just stretch the background. Like I know that, for example, in here, I want to see the girl doing something else. Another nice thing, you get, what do you call it? The onion skin, or whatever you want to call this. You get to see the frames before and after. And this is really nice, I think. I think there was something with the, yeah, so this is the onion skin. You get to choose, like, I want to see like 2 frames before this keyframe and 2 frames after. You get to see like 10 frames. Well, actually 10 is a really, it's a stretch. But, you know, you see the, you know, usefulness of this tool, right? Is there a way to dock it here? Yes, it is. I'm just going to dock it. Oh, that's why they are called dockers, right? Because they dock. Okay. So let's say, so when it shows as the color of yellow, red, it means that the frame is, we are 1 frame or 2 frames after the one that we want to see, right? So let's say this girl enters and then just, you know, moves, you know, her head, and or maybe she just sits down. Let's just have her sitting down. And I think, yeah, you can turn it up and down, like the onion skin, if it's like too visible and you're like, no, I just want to have some indication of it, so you can just set that to, so she just sits here, closes her eyes, and just probably start meditating, or she just sits, stretches out. I don't actually have any idea why she's doing this, but so she does that. So now you get, I think it's pretty cool. And you can turn off this when you want to just check what's happening in your scene. This and this. And the background stays the same. And it's not like crazy Photoshop, right? Because you get a nice timeline and you get layers. And let's say the next shot, the background changes, right? So I'm just gonna, actually I think if you just start drawing, it's just gonna create a new layer. Let's just try that. So background, just gonna, let's see, what is the erase everything? Clear is delete. So with this one, I'm just gonna delete, I deleted the background, right? And I'm also gonna create an empty keyframe. Keyframe to the right, so we don't see the line work, right? But in the background layer, I'm just gonna select on it. Did I just, okay. I think I just deleted the whole background. I didn't mean to do that. So let's just see what happens if we start drawing here. Let's say keyframe to the right. Oh, here we go. Okay. Before, because I didn't create the first keyframe, I guess it just deleted the whole background. When I said clear the screen, it just deleted everything. And yeah, this is like, you know, I'm not a professional user of Krita, so if I tumble around, just, you know, please don't get confused. Okay, so here you can see that it holds the background for 2 frames, and you know, I created another keyframe, and now I can start drawing the new background. Here I want to add another keyframe to the right, so I have because I know this is not going to be how the character is going to look like in my new frame, right? Insert keyframe to the right. I'm just going to put a number on here. This is 1A. This is 1B. This is 2, probably 2A. But you get the idea. So if I want to see the background, I can turn it on and off. If I want to see the character, but this is actually a new scene, so I don't need to see the background. So probably I want to just have a close-up of the girl. So I'm just going to draw the background for it. Let's see, probably we have like a little bit of the door showing up, something like that. And this is the background, and be careful. And you can see that when I created the first keyframe, from now on it's just gonna know, oh, whenever you start drawing, I'm just gonna create a new frame. But you can also, when you wanna start, like if I click here and start doing something, it's gonna add up to the previous frame and creates another one. So if that's what you wanna do, you can do that. Or if you want to start with a new frame while you're selecting the background layer, you can just hit delete, and it deletes everything. You can just turn it on and, you know, draw whatever. But be aware that whenever you start drawing on a layer that is on a frame that is on hold, it's just going to create a keyframe automatically, right? So here in my second background, I think that's all about it. I just want to have something for you to get an idea. But let's say this is the background, and then I'm going to move to the line, and here I want to turn on the onion skin, but the second frame is just too visible. I don't want that actually. I just need this one because I want to have the same expression on the face, right? So selecting the line layer, I'm just gonna draw the face like a close-up, right? So yeah, that's how it works. I'm just gonna turn the onion skin off, or actually I would better turn it off from here. But you see the benefit of working this, right? You get to just draw the background once. You don't have to copy or paste any layers like you have to do in Photoshop, and you get to work in a beautiful timeline, and the keyframe and the setting is kind of intuitive. I think it's really nice. So whenever you want to create new frame that is empty, just hit delete. If you want to add to the previous frame, like if it's something that you want to add up to and it's a new frame, just start drawing. And once you're done, you can export this whole thing as PNG or as PSD actually. The only thing that I want to say that bothers me is that you don't get to rotate the screen. But for so many people, I've noticed that they actually don't use that option, right? If you hold down R in Photoshop, you get to rotate your screen, and that would be easier to draw something, like, because the same way that we do with paper, right? We just rotate the paper to be able to draw a straight line in an angle or something. You don't get to do that here, and I don't like that. But I think it's for those of you who don't use that option, well, lucky for you. And for those of you who like to have that option, especially when you want to do the finalized artwork, you can export everything as a PSD file, and then you can open it up in Photoshop, add a new layer on top, and just draw the final work with, you know, any brushes that you want to use in Photoshop, and then just save it, right? And I'm going to show you here how to actually export. You can export multiple frames, or you can just export one frame. But the thing is with the, oopsie. So notice that when you grab this slider, or whatever you want to call it, indicator of time, if you grab it from the top, you get to move in the timeline. If you grab this, like, you know, if you're in a layer and you grab this, then you're moving your keyframe around. Now I just, you know, moved that keyframe here, right? The girl that is standing, just moved it from there to here. And I think you can just do Control C and then Control V here. That would be my guess. Well, I guess it doesn't. Copy to clipboard, okay. And what is the shortcut for that? Doesn't tell you. I bet there is. We can ask TJ. I'm sure he knows. Paste from clipboard, but I'm sure there's a shortcut for that. We can actually look it up. Copy, paste keyframes in Krita. I'm not gonna, just because this tutorial is gonna be so long, so I'm not gonna do that, but I'm sure we can just find that. Okay. So you get to see what a nice thing it is to have, right? And when you want to export, you can do export. Let's first save this scene. I'm just gonna save this scene as story development, my story reel. Just gonna create a new folder, Krita projects, and I'm just gonna name this one test1 Krita project. So now it is saved. I can just now go and say export, and you get to choose. You can see that there's PNG, there is JPEG, there is Photoshop, which is nice. I'm just going to choose Photoshop to show you how the layer exports, right? But you can export PNG if you're not, if this is like the final result of the project you're working with. So I'm just going to hit save. Probably just exported this one frame, right? Yeah, let's just see that one frame. Open story development, my story reel, Krita project. What a nice thing, right? Everything with the names, so you can keep working on that with the layers. And if you want to export like a bunch of frames, you can do that too. So if you trying to remember where it was, keyframes, export all. It should have export all actually. That's my bad, I think, because I chose the document instead of import from Clipboard. Yeah. So I need to figure this out, but I'm gonna just save this, and I'm not sure if there's a way to change the type of the document. Create copy, document information. Okay. Oh, okay. So I'm just gonna save this. And so you know how to export one frame. In the next tutorial, I'm going to show you how, if you have like a bunch of thumbnails that you drawn traditionally, you can just import them in, import them all as an animation. It's going to be opened up in here, and then you can draw on top of that and export them all as animation.